Welcome to the Champion Within podcast, your go-to spot for unlocking a winning mindset. Whether you're an athlete chasing greatness, a parent cheering from the sidelines, a coach leading the charge, or an educator shaping young minds, this pod party is for you. Hey, if we haven't met before, I'm Kate McCauley, your pod party host, former educator turned mindset mentor. I get to meet people where they are and get them to where they want to go. Expect awesome guest conversations with athletes, some solo chats to level up, and always leave this pod party with quick, powerful strategies to help you and your crew push past limits, embrace challenges, and crush goals both on and off the field. Let's tap into the champion within, because greatness is just a mindset away. Hey everyone, thank you for joining us on The Champion Within today. I am excited to share my guest with you. Today, you are going to hear some amazing nuggets of wisdom. So get ready to lean in. Coach Tim Neiman is a renowned team performance speaker and seasoned baseball coach. He's currently in his 36th year as the head baseball coach at DeSales University. He has over 800 wins. I did do some stalking. Those who have been around for a little while know that I like to look into things. And when he was interviewed about that 800th win, he said, it isn't about the wins. It's about the relationships made along the way and for the simple love of the game. I was obsessed with that, and I can't wait to talk a little bit more about that today. Coach Neiman inspires teams and leaders as a speaker, focusing on topics that includes building a legacy, team killers, and creating a culture of success. He recently also published a book called What is Your Legacy? The acronym for that is love, empower, giving, accountability, commitment, yearning. You know, I love everything about this. So we are going to learn a lot today. I can't wait for you to lean in, listen, probably steal a lot of it for yourself, your team, maybe your children, your students, or my teachers who listen. So Coach, how are you today? Thank you for joining us.
It's a little rain, but other than that, I'm doing really well.
I would agree on the rain. My husband helps out with the youth football organization, and they have been bringing the fire department down to the field to do their practice with their hoses and the trucks, and they're watering down the fields because they cannot get the paint to stay. It's so dry. It's crazy. So I'm sure that everyone is experiencing that if they live anywhere in our area, Pennsylvania, pretty much. We do need that rain. Let's get into it here. Tell me, 36 years, and I loved that quote about building relationships. There's so many different ways we could go with that, but congratulations on over 800 wins now at this point. If you could tell me just a little bit, how do you get to this place and look back and say, wow, this is really something amazing, but also look at all of the relationships that I have built?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. So, I mean, over 800 wins, the kids own all those. They play. I don't play. I haven't thrown a pitch or swung a bat in anger in all my coaching days. But I do have about 500 losses, so I own those. The kids have the wins. I own the losses. And it occurred to me, again, 36 year now at DeSales, it occurred to me, luckily a long time ago, that we won a lot in spite of me. You know, I don't play. But it occurred to me it is about the relationships, and those are I'm undefeated, I think, in relationships. Those are the victories that, that live with you, that sustain you, that make you want to keep going. I write in a book a little bit about social media and about these relationships, and I always tell the kids, look, I'm not going to be all up in your social media while you play for me. Just remember what you put out there is out there. You're not going to get rid of it. Coach, I deleted it. No, you didn't. It's still there. So, but what you will do is be my Facebook friend when you graduate, because I want to know, or LinkedIn, I want to know what you're doing, where you're doing it. Are you married? Do you have kids? And usually at the bottom of my email at school, I always put down, here for you, ... always. And I always want them to know that if you need a reference, you need advice, please reach out. And those, once they play for me, they always play for me. So, I've got guys that are now in their 50s, carved out great careers. Their sons are playing, high school and college baseball. And, it makes me feel good. It makes my heart swell, if you will, when they reach out and say, Coach, I need a little advice. I've always tried to be very honest and truthful with them up front. But without those, there's just shallow wins between the lines. Just shallow. I remember the losses more than I do the wins. A few wins, but not many. But it's more the losses where I wasn't very good that day and I let the team down. The post, season, the post-graduation relationships that you forge over time, those are cherished. Those are memories I would never give up, and future things that I look forward to each and every day.
I love that answer. And there's so many different things that we could pull out there. Let's just go back to the beginning there where you said you don't play, they own the wins. But then, of course, taking ownership for the failures. Then another piece that you said that you learn from the losses. As a coach, you can learn, your athletes can learn, and those are lessons that you can grow together as a team. Obviously, you want to get better and win, but they carry over into life too. And I love at the end of that email, I'm here for you. I do something similar with my emails. I say I'm rooting for you always. And I truly do mean that as well. I would love, do you have a story, without giving anyone's names, but do you have a story of a time where maybe either while they were a player or after, maybe it could be years after, where someone did reach out to you for advice? It could be baseball or unrelated. And maybe someone right now is thinking, as a coach or a parent, I do have teachers that listen to that, how could we navigate this, and the advice that they could give?
There's probably many, many of them. A lot of it occurs during the season as well, and here for you always kind of thing. So we had a tragic car accident March of 2021 where we lost a former player,
My goodness.
former player's girlfriend, and one of my current players was, he lost a leg basically. So it was a terrible, terrible.
Oh yeah, I'm so sorry.
And it's impacted me and left a lasting impression. And there was times where, boy, I'll never forget the phone call I got from one of my players saying, "Look, Coach, this isn't good. Or at the hospital," and I was gone within minutes. So they needed me there, and I knew that. And so my time for grieving, mourning, was not that time. I know that many were counting on me. And from that, there were so many former players, friends of the program, parents, all reached out to me.
Thank you for being so vulnerable.
It was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard. But, I knew I had to be there for them. I knew I had to be the rock. And that's what I tried to do. So, one of my former players is now a state policeman. So the day after, I'd probably gotten 2 hours of sleep, maybe. And he came to the door, pulled up in his cruiser in my driveway, and my wife, Roseanne, said, "Hey, Jay's here." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm laying in bed. Numb." And he comes up. She brought him up and said, "Coach, we all need you right now." So, that, never forget that. And he was speaking for everybody. He was speaking for everybody. And that still has exists through to this time, just that specific. So, look, nowhere in the coaching manual or in the teaching manual for that matter does it say, here's how you handle those situations. But if you're a leader, you've got to shoulder, I wouldn't say it's a responsibility, but, shoulder the, expectations of being that person that people go to for comfort and, whatever else they need. So somehow, some way, I managed to hold it together for quite a long period of time, and, handling the media that came. And it was quite a story. But at any rate, we survived, and the kids, I remember talking to the kids saying, "Look, do you guys want to," this is right in the middle of our season, just at the beginning.
Wow.
"You guys want to play? It's okay. If you don't want to play, that's fine. If you want to wait and start a little bit later, we can do that. And they're all like, Coach, I think they would want us to play. So we
Right.
did. But the relationship, so we run a dinner called the Legacy Dinner, and it's the 7th year coming up. It's always bringing speakers, but one of the things we do at the end is give out a legacy award, and it's in the name of the 2 of the players that passed away, and their parents come every year. And, so the last 3 or 4 years. So
I
I'm
love
still
that.
there for them. Some days they'll be there for me if I need them, but you're just never away from it. One of my former players is an attorney. He's coaching softball in college. And he says, Coach, there's so many things I remember you told us. And he called me and asked for advice how to handle, the players. And like sometimes what I can say to the males are a little differently than what we can say to the girls. But
Very true. Sometimes it has to come across a little differently.
I told him some things that I thought would be helpful, but he's in his 50s, very successful, and I'm an oft-used reference, which makes me really happy. We'll get references, especially like in law enforcement. I don't have a background, but for some reason we have 20 guys, alums that are in law enforcement. And
Wow.
And inevitably they may know me, but hey, we're doing a reference check on this guy. And by the way, I think the guy that does all the training for you in New Jersey was a former player of mine. And I gave him his name. He goes, oh my God, it's unbelievable. So
Everyone. It's like that 7 degrees of Coach Neiman, right?
This reference becomes, this storytelling and relationships, and
Right.
all of a sudden, the guy gets hired. So, I mean, it's ongoing. It's every day. And
It is.
it fulfills me. No question about it.
It is. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And my love goes out to everyone. It's amazing that you have that dinner every year and that their parents get to come. What a great tribute to their lives, and to just be able to celebrate them and let the legacy live on. That's incredible. And for you to be able to be that strong rock as Jay, the state trooper, came up, and, your wife knew that they needed you, everyone, not just Jay, is a testament to how incredible you are. I'm wondering, do you do anything to take care of you? Because sometimes as a teacher, as a coach, and myself, the work that I do now, it can be heavy. That's a lot for you to carry. So are there any either mindset or just daily routines? It doesn't have to be anything major, but things that you do to make sure that, you take a breath and take care of yourself.
That's a great question, because I do get asked that. And sometimes I don't have a great answer, to be honest. With you. I mean, we have... my wife and I have dogs. We have 2 huskies, so we're really, we love them to death. And
Sure.
That helps. I don't know I just to sit and watch a ball game sometimes, but it's fine with me. We have season tickets to the Phillies, so that
I think those are great answers, actually. Sometimes people think that mindset, especially when I'm out working with people now, they think this mindset work has to be, let's get around a tree and hold hands and, do a kumbaya situation. And I explain to them, you can do those kinds of things. That's okay if you like that, but it doesn't have to be. Hanging out with your dogs and watching the Phillies, whatever brings you joy and calm and happiness, that is a great answer. So I think those are awesome answers, as long as you realize I need to do things for me too, because as you said, you always have to be there, and it's a privilege. We take that as a privilege as an educator. I got to coach not at the college level like you do, but when we coach, when we're teachers, when we're out in the world sharing our words like you do as a speaker, I'm sure people come up to you after. It happens to me, and they share their needs and their stories, their journey, their struggles. And we often take that on and provide wisdom, insight, tips for them, and it can be heavy. So I'm glad that, the dogs, your wife, the Phillies, when they're doing well, I'm sure there's sometimes that might not bring you calm.
We do share in the burden of others, I think, as leaders.
Yes.
That we really, really do. And
Definitely.
sometimes probably over the edge with that sort of thing, perhaps. By the way, one of my dogs is between my feet right now.
Okay.
They're named after Yankees, so this is Munson, after Thurman Munson. He's right on my feet.
And what's your other dog's name?
Is Pip. That's a tough question, trivia-wise. So it's fun. It's a she, female. So it's hard to find girls' names that are Yankee related. So
Okay.
Wally Pip was the player that came off the field and allowed Lou Gehrig to play first base and set the all-time consecutive games played record until Cal Ripken broke it. So we looked through the archives and, Pip, that fits. And she looks like a Pip. She's
Guess what? Our dog, who happens to be sleeping on the couch, he just lives his best life, is named Boston because we were at the Boston Red Sox game the summer before, and we are Phillies fans. Everyone says when we're taking Boston for a walk, aren't you Phillies fans or Eagles, Phillies, and they start to get a little angry in the Philadelphia. We're outside of Philly in the suburbs here. And they start to question, and we have to say, we are Philly fans, calm down. But my husband loves the Boston Red Sox, and we were at a Red Sox game. It was actually the year the Phillies won the World Series. We were there that summer, and my kids, all of us, we loved the atmosphere there. They were arguing over names, and we settled on Boston. We also loved the city, just the whole vibe there. So pretty cool. We both have dogs that are baseball named, related to baseball. Pretty cool.
Yep, very cool.
Yeah, very cool. So I want to hear a little bit about your book. You have the new book that is recently published, and I love the acronym. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's who'd have thunk it, right? Here I am, baseball guy, and all my life to it. And, it occurs to me that you accumulate a lot of stuff over time. And supposedly age there follows with wisdom, and so hopefully I have a little bit of it. But, there's a lot of stories to it. And I spoke at the American Baseball Coaches Association the COVID year. So I flew down November 2020 to Greensboro, shot it in a studio, and then it was presented virtually in January. Typically, there's 5,000 people there. So I got kind of gypped out of the crowd.
Yeah.
So this is where it came from. They wanted me to speak on something other than X's and O's, which is great. It was right up my alley. So I came up with this, and because I think there's a lot of coaches, a lot of young people out there, not just in coaching, in professional and business life or whatever, they're doing their thing, but what is that relationship leading to? What's the impact going to be down the road? And I think the sooner I can get people to realize what purpose would be in what they're doing, whatever we decide to do, it's the vehicle to help others, I think. So
I love that.
Baseball's a vehicle for my players to get a degree and move on and make some kind of contribution to society. What we do, you're making an impact. It's the vehicle. The podcast is a vehicle to help others. And so it dawned on me, and I like acronyms because I think they're easy to remember. And also, when they read the book, they can go back and find out. I read this book, but I want to go back and look at that giving section. So it's love, empower, giving, accountability, commitment, and yearning. Why was hard to come up with. In fact, in my talk on the ABC, it was family with a Y.
Okay.
But it was good. And I geared it around family, but I kind of changed it to yearning because I mentioned what makes your heart swell? What does get you up in the morning, make you feel good, like you and I are doing right now, talking about people we've impacted. What drives you? What is it? We all have it. Sometimes they have to think about what it is. And it could be anything. And it could be whatever. And when they're younger, it's kind of hard to figure out. Sometimes you need an aspirational goal that, all right, I want to be a professional baseball, or just say college baseball. How do I get there? So go backwards from that. What do I got to do to do that? So the yearning is that aspiration. I like that a lot. Love is, we touched a lot of it already, of just caring, being there for others. Empower, I think, is stuff some people don't talk about a whole lot, but I think to empower folks gives them trust. This is a book. It's an execution by Larry Bassett. He was a former Jack Welch General Electric disciple, if you will, but he talks about robust dialogue. So he's the guy running a show, and in his meetings, he allows robust dialogue. He wants to, and I think a good coach leader does that. He or she wants to hear, what your ideas are.
So I'm going to jump in there. How could a coach do that? If a coach is listening right now,
Yeah.
what would you suggest that they do?
Well, again, let's say just with our coaching staff or our players, believe it or not, it's the players. It's a little dictatorial as a head coach. The buck stops with, I got to make the final decision.
Sure.
So there are many things with players that I have in our team meetings. So what do you think? Here's some things that are coming up. Could be anything. And so they take some ownership in it. We're talking about community service. Our team's going to the Dominican Republic, January 6th to the 10th. So we'll play some baseball, but we also visit an orphanage, which I talk about. We'll usually do a clinic. We do stuff, and we take things with us. So to give and leave. And we just had a conversation the other day with a bunch of guys. What do you think we ought to take along? What should we, I like that's a great idea. So they talk. It's a conversation. Right. It's a dialogue. Same with, if you are the boss and you are the leader and you've got a half a dozen subordinates in your conference room, they don't want to be told what to do. They want to, they want to jump in and do it because they want to, because you've inspired them. That's why I don't like the term motivational speaker. If I motivated you, I'd probably motivate you like, I can't wait till this guy's done so I can get to the parking lot, right, and drive home. But if I inspired you, right, I've inspired you. I've given you something.
Someone said that to me yesterday. Thank you so much for what you did for me. And I said, you're welcome. However, please know I guided you. It was within you and you did that. You answered. They were asking me a couple questions after. It was with college students. And she was asking my opinion, what should I do? And I said, the answer. We just talked about this. And I guided the questions out of her. It was during the Q&A afterwards. She knew the answer. I just, like you were saying earlier, reflect. We ask them, what do you think? And sometimes brilliant, amazing answers come when you allow your team, your players, if you are that business owner, to give some ideas, because they're sitting there with that inside their brain. And really, it is selfish of you not to bring that to the table, because you have them there on your team, in your boardroom for a reason.
Yeah, so that's empowerment. So, you're sitting with some salespeople or something. They may have, and they're salespeople, they have great ideas, but they may be afraid to even express themselves because, somebody in charge is, maybe that person takes all the credit, or, your idea became that person's idea. And somebody told me one time, there's no sense having assistant coaches if you don't let them coach, which is what I do. I surround myself with really good people, probably better than me, and that's okay. And we all have our strengths. And I think that's one way to be a coach or a leader is to be able to empower people. I've found out too, real quick, Kate, is I think if you got folks on your team, whether it's in sports or in business, and they are a little bit of a rebel, let's say, they have to try to get in. They seem like bad things follow somebody. And I found out over my career, you take that player for me and give them some responsibility that say, look, I trust you. Don't let me down. And we talked maybe a little about accountability. The operative word in is, can I count on you? Count, C-O-U-N-T. Can I count on you? And that person empowered him to be responsible for something. It doesn't matter what. Hey, make sure the guys aren't late for camp tomorrow. Make sure that, they don't, make sure they look the way they're supposed to look.
Right.
They're representing us, right? I have one rule in the team, don't embarrass the team. Make sure nobody embarrasses the team this weekend. When they're kids, it happens from time to time. But
to be expected.
They won't do that. So, but I've given that responsibility to somebody that has those problems or those issues. And boy, does it help them grow up.
Yeah, so I love that. Hey there, before we dive back into the pod party, how about we sneak out for a quick break? Feeling the weight of the daily grind? Our workshops and staff development programs are your backstage pass to success. We're here to arm you and your leadership squad with the tools to ace those goals, tame stress, and foster a winning culture. Forget the boring seminars. Our workshops are all about real connections and real results. Whether it's virtual or in person, we're here to elevate your success. After the show, visit shop.danielnow.com to learn more and set up a free call to chat. We tailor our programs to fit your needs and goals. Let's get back to the show. Grab your virtual goodie bags so you can fill them up with all of the mindset magic. So what do you see happen? Obviously, if they're on your team, you saw strengths in them and you see something maybe even beyond that baseball skill. And you describe them as somewhat of a rebel. I had a couple athletes that I coached pop into my brain when you said that, and some students that I taught over the years, even some clients that I've worked with thinking, you're a little edgy, but I like you. They were always my favorite type of students, athletes to coach. So in your experience, again, I don't want to be putting people's names out there, but what have you seen happen when you give them that job or responsibility? Like you just said, I see something in you and make sure the team doesn't embarrass us. Make sure everyone's on time. What do you see happen over time with that rebel?
There's a story in the book, and the name is, ask him if I could use his name. And
okay,
it's kind of cleaned up a little bit. I'm not going to say it now. But he had some issues, and where I threw him off the team for a year, know, and said, look, I should probably never take you back. Probably not. But I'm going to say this. If you can get your act together and you can be a responsible human being, we'll take you back. So he comes back, and I started to empower him with some things. And just the way they grow up, just growing up right in front of my eyes, and just the way they carry themselves, and in baseball, body language, and talk about bad faces, put us on the mound. He's going to lose today. That's a bad face right there. So we talk about that. And this guy has gone on to be a major business guy, sales. I forget exactly what he's doing. And that's what he's doing in his life now. He's in his early 40s and has a beautiful family and all that stuff. And he goes, Coach, I can't thank you for the tough love.
Right.
I can't thank you. He was our starting center fielder when we played in the World Series in Division III in 2003. He was a starting center fielder.
Amazing.
And he became a leader in his own right from somebody that was almost in the gutter. We had some egregious issues with him. And then he worked himself out. One of the things we do is we try to put things behind us. You've got to have a short memory. I always say the good Lord puts eyes in front of your face to see where you're going, not worry about where you've been.
I love that. And the short memory, both of those things. I hope everyone, coaches, parents, teachers, go back, rewind that and listen again. So true, because it is really easy for us to say, remember when you did that? I'm not going to forget this. And I'm not saying that we don't have a reaction or a consequence for the behaviors, because I do think that is important, but you need to say to someone, if you can get it together, I see something in you and I want you to be back here. Just like the end of your email, I am here for you. So, wow, that's incredible. And for you to be that impactful and to hear him say to you, thank you, Coach, because I know being in that coaching position and as a teacher, you probably lost some sleep. That was hard for you to kick him off the team. You had to do it. Of course, you had to do it. You knew you had to do it, but it was also tough. It wasn't fun when you have to do something like that for an athlete. So
I took something away from him that he loved.
Right.
He loves to play baseball. And that's happened before. I'll give you another story about that, which is this is also in the book, and I also used his name, but we were in San Antonio on a spring trip, and this was probably in the middle of the week, and San Antonio's a city with things going on, and, they get the lay of the land after a while. So he's out and about with some of his buddies on the team, and wife and I are, in town. It's like, that wasn't like 9:15. We get a text message back on a flip phone.
Right.
Tyler might be in trouble. I'm like, oh, great. So one thing that I don't do is I never panic. I always know the truth typically lies somewhere in the middle. So I didn't really get worked up. I said, all right, about 10 minutes later, you had a police have him. Okay, this is a game changer. So we leave, my wife and I, we leave. We're walking. We know where he's at. We walked a block and a half, and the police officer starts coming towards us. Remember the rule I have, don't embarrass the team.
Right.
So he gets to the first words out of the police officer's mouth were, Tyler did not embarrass the baseball team.
So he was saying, I don't want to embarrass the team.
No kidding. My wife goes, oh my God. I'm like, what did he do? Well, he urinated on the wall. Like, oh my God. And he ran away and, that kind of stuff. So I got to him. I suspended him. We had a little team meeting the next morning because I'm thinking there's no way he's by himself. So we have 28 players in a room, 14 of them. I said, anybody not here involved? One way, didn't aid a bet anything. 14 hands go up. All right, you're excused. So I have 14 left. 14 of them are left, including Tyler. I'm like, all right, let's hear it. So I just let him talk. And he said, and it's done. I said, here's what we're going to do. Tyler, you are suspended indefinitely. Could be a week, could be a month, could be forever. Forever. And he was sobbing when I got to him, by the way. He was, Coach, please don't throw me off the team. Don't throw me off. That's all he worried about. He could have, he didn't care what the police officer was doing. Don't throw me off the team because he was suspended a month. The rest of them did not play against the number one team in the country that night. They sat and watched. I said, you made the decision. You're responsible for all this. You could have prevented it. You made decisions. Quick end of that story. We had a Zoom during COVID trying to figure out what to do, work from home, all that jazz, So we had an alumni Zoom. But I had to split it up by decades because there's over 100 guys that wanted to get on. So he's in the middle one. So it's about halfway through, and he goes, Coach, he said, I'm sorry, I've got to cut out. I said, I need to put my kids to bed. How about that? How about that? And he's working with like a kids piece or some kind of group like that. I mean, what are the outcomes going to be? And I think outcomes are, what do I want this to be? The outcomes are critical, I think, when people think about, what they're doing, and don't panic either. Truth does lie in the middle, usually.
I love that. And earlier you said, I'm not sure if I have anything specific as a coach, that I do for myself. I think that right there is a mindset tool. Don't panic. Truth lies in the middle. I know myself, I'm going to steal that for myself because how true. Really, there's so many different information and pieces of things that you need to collect. Like you put everyone in that room and said, okay, let me take a breath here and figure out what happened. Of course, you talk to the police officer and all the different things, and don't panic. Because just as you were talking about the tragic situation when everyone is looking at you, if you panic, they're all looking at you again in this situation. And the way you show up sets the tone. Then they're going to panic. And of course, they're already upset, sobbing, to be expected. If you were panicking on top of that, could you imagine? Yeah. So I think that's great for coaches, people in general to remember.
It's saying that the team and sports especially reflect their coach, right? And I think that's very true. And again, like, am I churning during a game, in a close game, and all that kind of, oh heck yeah, I can't let them see it. I can't really, the pitchers don't show emotion. Same in the boardroom, same in a company. If your superior, your boss, your leader is all panicky, everybody else is going to, and what do? They talk and they surmise and they don't have all the information, and you can't really make a great decision until you have as much information as you can possibly kind of digest and then go from there. Because sometimes people make mistakes. That's okay. That's okay. We don't learn. I think sports it's a great way. It's adversity. They overcome adversity. 3 for 10 in baseball, Bryce Harper's a gazillionaire, but if Bryce Harper's 2 for 10, they ain't getting the money. He ain't getting paid. But 7 times he failed. So if I'm fixing your car, you brought your car somewhere and 10 times you went there and 3 times I got it right for you. But the other 7 times I didn't. I'm not in business very long. Or you go to a dentist and I pulled the wrong teeth 7 times. Baseball's just built on failure. It just is. And they handle adversity. And I think people in general need to learn to do that. And again, move on. You can't change it, but you got to learn from it. I mean, there's always lessons to be learned. And try not to make another mistake a similar way. But if you do, it's okay. It's okay. If nobody ever made mistakes, there would never been anything learned in the history of the world.
Very true. I'm
Sure
so
is.
glad you're bringing that up because sometimes when I talk with people, if I'm on the podcast or if we're out somewhere, I think people receiving the message here, this is great. This coach got 800 wins. I want to hear from him. And they hear all of the good things and they start to think, well, I can't be like him. Or they'll say to me, well, this must be nice. And they don't realize all of the failures, all of the mistakes. So thank you for acknowledging that and saying, you said it in the very beginning, there was losses too, and we can learn from this. We can grow from the mistakes. And exactly what you just said, if we didn't have failures, mistakes, setbacks, there would be so many things that we miss out on and didn't learn from. It is how so many inventions and different things have happened in the world because someone made a mistake and said, well, if not this, something better. So I think that's important for people to realize. Sometimes people feel like, oh, well, that's great for Coach Neiman. He can do all of these things, but that's not for me. You can look at it that way, or you can look at it as, let me remember that he said there were failures, I had losses, and I learned from those things. Is there a time where you can think for yourself, this was a moment for me, maybe in coaching or maybe getting to that place when you were, I assume you played baseball?
Some.
I would guess when you're getting here, when you can think this was a setback or a failure, or I made a mistake, and how did you grow from it?
I think that happens all the time as a coach, and there's always things that you wish you would have done differently, and all those things. I mean, I coached American Legion baseball way back when I was younger, and went into college coaching, and I think an important part of a growth aspect is to have great mentors as well. And you don't need a bunch of them, but somebody that maybe you can count on. I've been very fortunate to have those. And speaking of a mentor, as a player, as an American Legion player, 18 years old, I went to get my uniform one day, and I was I put on a couple extra LBs at the time, and coach hands me, and he was my mentor too, he hands me a pair of pants, and they didn't fit. He says to me, do something about it. So, okay, there you go. Yeah.
That's a straightforward answer.
I would have said it somewhat differently, but I talk about a setback. Yeah, I just needed somebody to tell me that. And sometimes you need people to tell you the truth. I mean, the best thing we can all hope for is that somebody will tell us the truth.
Yes.
I think that goes with the travel world, baseball world, and all the travel sports, and sometimes in business as well. Please just be honest with me and tell me the truth. It's not what we say, it's how we say things. I talk about in the Team Killers speech I do and that's going to be a book too. It's going to be really good.
I love the topic, that name, Team Killers. That's pretty cool.
And, I talk about how, sometimes people just don't fit and you got to let them go.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked for a guy that signed more major league players. I was a scout for the Pittsburgh Pirates for a while. He signed more major league players than any scout that ever lived. And I never forget what he said. Just because you're not a prospect for the Pittsburgh Pirates doesn't mean you're not a prospect for somebody else. So if I were to bring you in and Kate said, look, Kate's not working out. I said, it just doesn't seem to be a great fit. But I will tell you this, it may not be a great fit here, but I am confident there'll be a great fit for you somewhere out there. You're going to shake my hand and thank me, and probably, or you'll be mad, but you say, you know what, thank you very much. And it comes into play when we have to let players go. It doesn't happen a lot. But I think that same concept works for people in business. That happens all the time where I got to let somebody go or whatever. But you can say it in a way where the person maintains a little dignity and walks out the door and like, all right, I'll be okay. And if you need me, I'm still here for you. Please reach out.
Right. And you just never know where things go through your journey in life. And someone recently said, when you get a no, they look at it as NO, next opportunity. And they thank the person for their time, what they learned from it. And like you were saying, that's great advice from that recruiter. This might not be the place for you, but somewhere else definitely is. So the person has to be able to, it's not always the greatest to feel that, but when you get the feedback, you got to unwrap it like a gift and think, okay, what do I have here? And who am I a good fit for? Where will I align? Because there is a place for you, whatever it is, in baseball, in a relationship, in school, whatever it is, in business. And that is something that not everybody can lean into because they focus on the loss or getting cut or whatever happened in that situation. But the ones who truly are great, they want that feedback and they will use it as gasoline to go find that next opportunity. And they will thank you, because I can say for me personally, I've always wanted to leave with someone saying, I had a great conversation with Kate, no matter what I was doing. If it was a job, if it was a volunteer situation, teaching, coaching, there were tough conversations, of course. I'm a keeping it real kind of woman, but I never wanted someone to say, well, Kate, didn't do this or that, or she's always talking trash. I don't want someone to have anything negative to say. If I made a mistake, I would own it and then fix it. So, because you just never know. And even now in the journey I'm in, those people who I haven't seen for years have come to me and said, will you come speak at the organization, at the nonprofit I own, different things? Mind blowing in some ways to me, but it's because of those relationships and that how I acted after a situation, or and it wasn't always a rejection either. It was just leaving a job or ending that, time as an athlete, different things. So I think that's great advice for everyone to remember. If you don't make the team or you have to be let go from a job or whatever the situation is, I think everyone can steal that and make it theirs.
Well, and it's very true. It's how you. It's the old adage too. It's how do you make people feel? And there's one item quick that I remembered. And there's 4 things in your life that you need. And you may have heard these things. I'm not that smart to come up with it, but I subscribe to it.
Okay.
Something to do, something to look forward to, somebody to love, something to believe in. And I think as we go through our careers and our lives, if one of those areas go away, for some reason or other, we need to be able to fill it back in immediately. Because you think of our loved ones and other people in life. My father's a great example. He retired and he worked in a factory, and his something to do and something to look forward to is watch his grandsons play baseball. And that doesn't last forever. And, I don't know if this is all connected. I spoke at an auxiliary meeting at a hospital one time, and I talked about these kinds of things because they're raising money for dementia and that sort of thing. So my dad had Lewy body disease, which was the same as Robin Williams had. Mm. So it was sad to watch, but I'm thinking, geez, Dad, why don't you keep working? If I would have kept working, I would have stayed where I was, just stubborn Dutchman, So,
right.
But I think, and so as I transition out of, my career perhaps at DeSales University, I think of all those things. I think if I didn't have anything else to do, writing a book, speaking, doing things I like to do, I would be in that similar boat, I think. And I think it can affect your lifestyle and, how you feel. So, but I always remember too, people always remember how you make them feel. And
I would agree.
That's so true. And I'm always conscious of those kinds of things, especially as you get older. That really resonates. Everybody wants to fight. Everybody wants to combat, especially coming off this intense political season. What happened to the compromise? We're a country of compromise, and I think we're a culture and people of compromise. Somewhere in the middle is the right answer for everybody.
Yeah,
just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean I don't like you. That's not at all. But we need to get away from that kind of thing. And I think you and I and the people that we've impacted, I think they understand that. I don't see that type of sense from people we impact, I think.
I would agree. And I know for me personally, I love your be in the middle, get all of the information. And a lot of things you said there, I think it's important to have those mentors that you had mentioned, because you do need someone to tell you the truth and someone to have walked the path before you, drop a little wisdom here and there and give it to you straight when you need it. I think it is also very important to look at people like your dad and learn and say, I want to do it a little bit differently. Those 4 items, have those things in your life. and plan for them. You know, as you were mentioning, as I transition out of baseball coaching, what's the plan? Have a plan for those things. And for me personally, there is a lot of feelings and how people feel about the political world and life in general. And I can't change those things. I'm not powerful enough to do that. But what I can do is show up in the middle in some ways, but also just putting myself out there, helping people tap into that inner knowing and say, you know, it's within inside of you. And each day for my family first in my house, and then out into the world, if it's through speaking, the podcast, and as you as a speaker, your book, and still as a coach. I think if, like you said, we both keep doing that, and everyone else who does that, and anyone who's listening, you don't have to be a speaker or have a podcast or be an amazing coach for 36 years. Let's just acknowledge that. That's incredible. You don't have to be those things. You can do your part in your piece of the world, and you don't think it's that big, but it is. It has ripple effects every single time that you do that. Honestly, Coach, I think we could probably talk for hours and hours, but I will not keep you forever. I am going to ask you the question I ask every single one of my guests, and that is, if you had the opportunity to swap lives with anyone for just 1 week, to live their life, absorb their wisdom, and you don't stay there forever because we think you're amazing, just 1 week, who would you choose and why?
That's a very interesting question, and I'm sure we could come up with lots of answers. I'm going to tell you this, and maybe this is something different. I'm not sure I would trade my life for a week for anybody. I am blessed. I've had, a great family, a great wife, kids, great career. I've been allowed to do all the things I want to do. And I think sometimes when we look and like, I want to be like that, I want to be like her, I want to be like, I think you lose the fact of what you have inside you to come out. I would be concerned with a lot of that sort of thing. Look, let's figure out we're all on this earth with different abilities, and
right.
We're blessed with all these qualities. We're all individuals. We're all different.
You're right.
Let's get that out and make that impact. But I'll say this for fun.
Okay.
Right? Because you like baseball. So if I had to, I would trade with Aaron Boone, the manager of the New York Yankees, for 1 week, and that week has to be during the World Series. Because I like the Yankees, and I think maybe I could have helped the Yankees win the World Series.
There you go. And it would be fun. You would have a lot of fun. I will say that question was inspired by my oldest, who is a freshman in college, because I went on a podcast tour for a year prior to starting this podcast, and people had some interesting questions, and the team that helped me create this said, you have to have some signature. I said, I don't know what to create. So he helped me create that. And while you were answering that question, I was sitting here thinking, it's very interesting, because I think some people may say, I would love to be Coach Neiman and be inside his brain as a coach, because I think you have so much to offer and learn. And hearing you answer it and thinking about my son, Danny, who inspired that question, because to be quite honest, I couldn't think of something. And I said, okay, let's just see how this goes. And it's interesting because he's 18. And I think it's just a different view. And I get so many different answers. Someone picked their dog. People pick all kinds of different things. I love your answer. And I love your fun answer too, just to be there. And who knows, maybe you would have helped that team a little bit there. It would be cool if nothing else.
Never take the dream away, Kate.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. And before we jump off of the podcast, where can people find you if they want to book you as a speaker or follow you? What is the best place to connect with you?
So I do have a website. It's called CoachNeiman.com. Very simple to get to, and you'll see all the contact information on there. The book is on Amazon, Amazon.com. So doing pretty well for a month. Opened up on October 1st. So, and it's a quick read. It's 90 pages. I'm not somebody that sits and reads all night. Just, it's a good book to have on the shelf, I think, and refer to as you need it. So CoachNeiman.com is a place to come, and, I'll guarantee I get right back to you.
So everyone who's listening right now, you don't even have to type that in yourselves. I am going to drop the links in our show notes for the website and the book, so you can click right on those. order your book. Go to the website. If you are someone who books speakers, you will not regret this. As I said, I do my stalking. So I was looking at the website and doing some different deep dives, and it was pretty cool to hear you speak on some different things. So those of you who are thinking about, I might want to have him come, you should. Go do that. Click on the link. You will not regret it. And thank you for coming in to listen to us on The Champion Within. Go crush your week. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Whether you are going to coach, teach, cheer from the stands, or hit the field yourself, remember, mindset is everything. Don't forget to follow the show because we all need a little extra motivation, humor, and some sanity in our busy lives. Go unleash that champion within you, one step at a time. I'm rooting for you always.